Catherine stood in the quiet of a private chamber, her hands gently arranging a bouquet of white roses. The stillness of the moment, fragile, almost sacred, was broken by the sudden sound of a door creaking open. And there she was, Camilla. Not with a smile, not with the usual polite words that veil royal life, but with a demand. Her eyes fixed firmly on Catherine, her tone sharp, unbending. The Queen Consort wanted something that wasn't hers to take. Not jewels from the vault, not another ceremonial honor. No, she wanted Catherine's sapphire tiara, the piece shimmering with memory, history, and the deep weight of Diana's legacy. For a heartbeat, Catherine froze. A chill swept through the room. That tiara was not just a crown of stones and gold. It was a symbol, a reminder of love and loss, of William's mother, of a promise never forgotten. And when William heard what had been asked, when the words reached him, you could almost hear the thunder roll across palace walls. A storm was rising, one that would shake the calm facade of the monarchy itself. Royal jewels have always been more than ornaments. They are silent storytellers, whispering of lineage, loyalty, and power. Each diamond, each sapphire, each setting carries the weight of centuries, binding the present monarchs to those who came before them. To the public eye, these glittering treasures are symbols of majesty. But within the palace walls, they are something far more intimate. They are emblems of trust, inheritance, and respect. Among these treasures rests one piece with a meaning that stretches beyond beauty, a sapphire tiara that belonged to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Unlike many items drawn from the vaults, this was not merely chosen for her to wear, it was gifted. A personal wedding gift from Queen Elizabeth II herself, a gesture of welcome into the royal fold, but also an unspoken recognition of Catherine's role as the future Queen Consort. Each time she wears it, she carries not just elegance, but the memory of Elizabeth's reign and the deep expectation that accompanies it. And now the palace prepares for an upcoming state dinner, an evening where jewels do not simply sparkle, they speak. They send messages of strength, unity, and precedence. For Camilla, Queen Consort, this was more than an event. It was her stage, her moment to shine in the eyes of foreign dignitaries and the world's press. But one jewel in her eyes would cement her dominance: Catherine's sapphire tiara. This is where the tension erupts. For Catherine, that tiara is personal. For William, it is untouchable, linked to memories of his mother and the woman who shaped his path. And for Camilla, it is a prize, a crown that would announce her supremacy in the hierarchy of royal women. What began as a request to borrow jewelry had transformed into a confrontation of respect, memory, and quiet power inside the royal family's guarded halls. The sapphire tiara was never just a glittering crown for Catherine. Its story began on a night the world will never forget, her wedding to Prince William. As she stepped into her new life, the late Queen Elizabeth II placed the tiara into her hands, not as a formality, but as a personal gift. In that moment, Catherine was not only welcomed as a daughter-in-law, but entrusted with a piece of the monarchy's soul. Elizabeth had known the weight of wearing jewels not merely as ornaments, but as reminders of duty, sacrifice, and resilience. By giving Catherine the sapphire tiara, the Queen had marked her as someone worthy of carrying that same weight. When Catherine first wore it publicly, it was not just the brilliance of the sapphires that caught attention, it was the symbolism. Here was the young Duchess of Cambridge, radiant yet steady, stepping into her role with quiet grace. The tiara became a kind of shorthand for who she was, modern but respectful of tradition, elegant but rooted in something deeper than appearances. Each time she placed it upon her head, the tiara whispered of the Queen's blessing and the unbroken chain between past and future. But then came change. With Elizabeth's passing, Camilla rose from consort to Queen Consort, a title carrying both honor and controversy. She knew well the eyes of the world were upon her. Every detail of her dress, every jewel she wore became a statement, and Camilla understood the language of presentation. In her world, symbolism was power, and the crown jewels were its sharpest tool. To her, Catherine's sapphire tiara was not merely beautiful, it was influential. Wearing it would say, without words, that she held command not just as queen, but as the woman who could lay claim to the jewels of Diana's son's wife. Meanwhile, Catherine's approach had always been quieter, but no less commanding. She had never fought for attention, never chased the limelight. Her strength lay in her steadiness, in showing that dignity could outlast drama. She was loyal to her husband, to the late queen's trust, and to the monarchy itself. Yet, within that loyalty, she held firm boundaries, rooted in love, memory, and self-respect. And now, those two paths, Camilla's hunger for visible authority and Catherine's quiet resolve, were about to collide over the gleam of sapphires that meant far more than anyone outside the palace could truly know. The request did not come as a gentle suggestion. It arrived like a command, cloaked in the language of unity and duty. Catherine was alone when Camilla entered, her presence filling the room with an authority sharpened by her new title. The Queen Consort's eyes fell directly on the sapphire tiara resting in its case. For the state dinner, she said with that careful tone of hers, it would send a message of solidarity, of continuity. One family, one crown. Her words were dressed as reason, but beneath them lay something colder. Camilla knew the power of presentation. She knew what the cameras would capture and what headlines would say. Catherine, in her heart, knew this too. The tiara was hers, given with Elizabeth's blessing, wrapped in memory and meaning. Yet to resist Camilla, to deny the Queen Consort so soon into her reign, would invite whispers of disunity. Catherine's instinct had always been to preserve harmony, to avoid spectacle. So after a long pause, too long, she nodded. But in that nod was no peace, only turmoil. Word spread quickly through the palace halls. Staff whispered, courtiers exchanged glances. The Queen Consort would be wearing Catherine's tiara. A jewel bound to Diana's son's wife would now sit upon Camilla's brow. The symbolism was impossible to ignore, and it stung in the shadows of silence. And then came the night of the dinner. Dignitaries, leaders, and royals gathered in splendor. Cameras flashed, commentators spoke in reverent tones. And there she was, Camilla, draped in regalia, crowned with the sapphire tiara. Commentators praised its history, but in their eagerness they tied it not to Catherine, but to the Queen Consort herself. A rewriting of ownership, a quiet erasure of Catherine's bond to Elizabeth's gift. The world saw Camilla triumphant, radiant, adorned. But one face was missing from the table. Catherine, who had pleaded a quiet absence, sat instead in her home. The television flickered with images of that dinner. Camilla smiling, jewels blazing. Catherine's eyes held steady, but inside she felt the sting of betrayal, of memory stolen. The tiara that once whispered her place in the monarchy now announced Camilla's supremacy before the world. Later that night, William returned. His eyes caught hers, searching, sensing something unsaid. And then he saw it, the footage, the pictures, the tiara upon Camilla's head. For a moment there was silence. Haish, heavy and suffocating. Then came the fury. William's voice cut through the stillness, his anger raw, unrestrained. This was not just jewelry. It was his grandmother's gift to his wife, a trust violated. To see it paraded as Camilla's crown was more than an insult. It was betrayal. His words echoed through their private walls, a storm breaking loose. It was not Catherine he raged against, but the system, the audacity, the manipulation, the fury of a son who had already lost his mother, now watching his wife stripped of a symbol of memory and respect. And in that moment, the palace's polished facade cracked, revealing the fire burning beneath. The storm did not wait long to break. William, still seething from the sight of the tiara perched on Camilla's head, sought her out the next morning. He found her in one of the palace's gilded drawing rooms, sunlight cutting sharp lines across the carpet. She looked up, poised, as if expecting gratitude for her performance the night before. But what she received was fury. William's voice was low at first, controlled, but every word carried the weight of fire. He accused her of manipulation, of dressing self-interest as duty, of exploiting Catherine's grace and silence. That tiara, he said, was my grandmother's gift, to my wife, not to the crown, not to you. Camilla, unshaken, met his anger with icy resolve. She argued that everything she did was for the monarchy, for its image, for the unity the world demanded to see. In her eyes, Catherine's possession of such a jewel was secondary to the role of the reigning Queen Consort. "This is not about you, or her," she snapped. "This is about the crown. I am the one wearing it now." The words sliced through the air, but William did not retreat. His anger hardened into something even sharper. "You may be queen," he declared, his voice breaking through years of suppressed restraint. "But you will not mistreat my wife, not while I live under this roof, not ever." The room trembled in silence after his words. For Camilla, it was a rare moment of being challenged, directly, without deference. For William, it was the release of years of guarded civility. Two forces collided, one protecting image, the other protecting dignity. And though the door remained closed, the palace has no true secrets. Whispers traveled swiftly, staff overheard fragments, aides exchanged knowing glances. Within hours, the tale of William's defiance threaded through the royal corridors. The clash between Queen Consort and future king was no longer private. It had become the undercurrent of palace life, and soon enough, it reached King Charles himself. Drawn reluctantly into the center of the conflict, he was forced to face the storm he had long tried to ignore. The growing fracture not just between two women, but between the crown's present and its future. King Charles could no longer remain a distant observer. The clash between his son and his wife had spilled too far to ignore. In a private meeting, tense, subdued, heavy with unspoken history, he stepped into the role of mediator. On one side sat William, still rigid with anger, his words measured but unwavering. On the other, Camilla, her composure masking a simmering defiance. Charles, weary of conflict yet bound to duty, made the ruling clear. A line was drawn. Personal gifts do not belong to the crown. They belong to the one to whom they were given. The sapphire tiara, bestowed upon Catherine by Queen Elizabeth II, was hers and hers alone. No circumstance, no title, no performance could erase that truth. Camilla listened, her expression unreadable. At last, she offered what the palace would later call an apology. Thin, brittle, more concession than remorse. The tiara was returned to Catherine, restored quietly to its rightful place. Outwardly, the matter was resolved, but inside the palace, resolution was only a word. The atmosphere grew taut, the fracture visible though unspoken. Staff walked carefully, courtiers avoided mention of the dinner. Camilla wore her crown, Catherine wore her silence, and William carried the fire of a son who had drawn his boundary at last. The jewel was back where it belonged, yet the trust that had once linked William to his stepmother had cracked, leaving a wound that no apology could mend. When the sapphire tiara was placed back into Catherine's keeping, it seemed at first like a restoration. The jewel was safe, the legacy intact. Yet to Catherine, its meaning had shifted. Once, it had whispered only of love, of Queen Elizabeth's blessing, of a quiet bond between past and future. Now, it carried the shadow of conflict, the memory of a demand, of humiliation, and of the storm it unleashed. Its sapphires still gleamed, but behind their light lay the reminder of how fragile respect could be, even within family. For William, the battle had left its mark as well. In defending Catherine, he had declared more than his fury. He had redrawn the boundaries of power. His voice, fierce and unyielding, had shown that the heir to the throne would not allow dignity to be sacrificed for image. He emerged not only as a husband protecting his wife, but as a future king defining his reign's tone, one of loyalty, justice, and unshakable resolve. Outwardly, the monarchy stitched itself back together. Smiles, appearances, ceremonies, all spoke of unity, but those who looked closely could see the fracture, a crack beneath the surface. Trust, once frayed, rarely mends without leaving scars. And so the question lingers. Is this the moment William and Catherine's influence truly began to rise? Or is it the first sign of the slow unraveling of harmony within the House of Windsor?